Good afternoon and welcome to an Innovation Forum webinar on how to quantify the value of sustainability, sponsored by EY and Trucost. I am Ian Welsh, Editorial Director at Innovation Forum. This afternoon we will try and provide some understanding of the challenges for companies in trying to put some hard numbers on what sustainability means for them and their businesses and the risks and opportunities that stem from this. On our panel this afternoon we have Joanna Gluzman, Director of Analyst Relations and SRI at BT. We have Matt Roberts, Director of Sustainability Strategy at Interserve, Sandy Stash, Vice President for Safety, Sustainability and External Affairs at Tullow Oil, and Cindy Rose, Head of Research for Responsible Investing at Aberdeen Asset Management. Welcome to all and thank you very much for being with us. Before we start, let me explain a little bit about the format of the webinar. There are no slides, as this is not a presentation as such. It's a structured panel discussion throughout with question and answer session towards the end. Audience members can get involved by posting questions via the webinar software that will come through to me and my colleagues, which I will then put to our panel during the second half of the webinar. So throughout the hour, please do send us any comments or questions and I'll put them to the panel a little later on. And we will aim to finish a little before 3 p.m. UK time. You will also receive a recording of this webinar via email, which I urge you to share with any colleagues that may be interested. This webinar forms part of the build-up to Innovation Forum's Measurement and Valuation of Corporate Sustainability Forum coming up in London on June 29th and 30th. The focus of this conference will be on how companies measure and value sustainable progress, how this strengthens their businesses, and also what data financial institutions are now looking for and value. Delegate passes are still available. For more information, visit the conference website. Details are on your screen right now. So, what are the key initial steps to properly getting to grips with measuring your sustainable business success and identifying the value for your company and its stakeholders? We're fortunate to have a panel made up of representatives of a diverse range of corporate sectors: communications technology in BT, construction and support services in Interserve, and the oil, gas and extractive sector in Tullow Oil, and from the investment community in Aberdeen Asset Management. So, to kick off our discussion, I'm going to invite each of the sector representatives in turn to introduce themselves and their companies and their sustainable business strategies, and most specifically to focus on how they define the value of sustainability and the data and information that they are collecting to do so. I will then ask Cindy Rose from Aberdeen Asset Management for some remarks, taking an investor's view about what stands out from the panel members' comments and what, in her view, is the data that is becoming most important. So, first off, let me turn to Joanna Gluzman from BT.
Thank you, Ian. So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining. As Ian mentioned, I'm Director of Analyst Relations and SRI Engagement at BT Group. It's a global telecommunications company. Most of you are very familiar with BT. 87,000 employees, 170 countries, turning over 18 billion a year, so fairly large company. We are composed of 6 smaller companies in the group, and our sustainability strategy is managed centrally through the group and trickling into all lines of business, the 6 companies of which we're comprised. Our strategy, that's an interesting one because in many companies you have CSR strategy as part of the overall strategy as a standalone element. So we evolved from sustainability being one of our strategic priorities to sustainability being our overall purpose as a company. So our purposes, which we communicated last year, I think it was around May time, is to use the power of communications to make a better world. And that is the overarching ethos of our company. Everything we do is adhering to that principle of, you know, we are doing this in order to make a better world. And that's a very powerful statement. There is nothing that we do in the company that does not reflect that ambition and that purpose. So if we look at the commitment in the company to sustainability, it starts from board level, where we have the Committee for Sustainable and Responsible Business. And in that committee, we have the group chairman, the group CEO, and the group CFO. So the highest level commitment. And then the commitment continues to trickle down to the lines of business where the sustainability strategy is implemented. Now that's roughly just the structure of how we do sustainability, what it means to us. But my particular role is to communicate our strategy and the benefits to investors. And so mostly the challenge is with sustainability is to explain why you're doing this, what is the benefit to you as a company and to the investor. Why should they invest in you? And therefore you need to put some monetary value or a certain value on the activity that you do. Nobody is going to invest in you because you're a nice company or because you want to do something nice. So we talk about several programs. There are 3 programs currently that are being evolved, and we're going to publish our Better Future report, I think, late this week or early next week. And that's going to evolve from there. But currently we're talking about some social programs, for example, fiber. It's one of our core capabilities. It's our core business. We have invested a lot in connecting the UK to fiber. And so we are looking at not only doing good, one of our goals is to connect 9 of 10 people to fiber, but also looking at the people who have never been online, at those people who are excluded socially. They're also an opportunity, a commercial opportunity to us. But we're also doing something good in the process. So we are living our purpose by delivering fiber to those people who don't necessarily have access to it. To quantify the value of this, we use certain metrics. One of them is called social return on investment. And we conducted an independent research that shows, and if anybody is interested, contact me offline and I can give you the methodology and all the research behind it, that for every £1 we invest on bringing somebody online through the Get IT Together program, society gets £3.70 back. And we also measure the benefit to society and to individuals from being connected online, and we got to different values. So a person first time online, an experienced person online, they would have different values for being online. So this is one way to measure the value of doing something that is your core business, but showing that you're not only doing good, you are adding benefit to society and you're having actually an actual value to yourself and society. Another way to look at things, and one of our other programs, is the 3-to-1 program, where we pledge to help our customers save 3 times the carbon burden, or our carbon burden, by 2020. Now, that sounds very technical. It's all about carbon emissions, but actually, if we're looking at the opportunities behind this, is we will need to come up with new innovative business models in order to sell those products and services that will help save those carbon emissions. And that requires looking at technologies like smart technologies, Internet of Things, and we're currently trialing and working on solutions that will go in that direction to help our customers save that amount of carbon. So we have a goal that is an environmental goal, but it actually has a value in terms of the volume that we sell. We developed a methodology to actually quantify, the volume of those products. We have a suite of products, and that was all verified again by an external body. And if anybody's interested, again, contact me on offline, and I'll give you the whole methodology. We look at the volumes of those products being sold, and we get to a number. And last year we reported that 3.1 billion of our portfolio, of our sales, were associated with those products that are helping us reach that goal. So again, an example of something that is an environmental goal, but we can put a monetary value on it. We're, of course, reporting lots of other KPIs that are quite important to people and to investors, because, there's always this tick box, approach to things. Not all investors are really looking at the value. There's a lot of, exclusion and screening methodologies still around, so they need to be satisfied we're reducing our carbon emissions and that our customer satisfaction is improving, that employee engagement is improving. So we're reporting all those. But I think my goal personally, and you know, I know that many people in the company, especially at very high levels, share my ambition, is that this becomes more of a mainstream decision, that investors don't just look at the company, you know, and tick the boxes of, you know, are you doing the right thing? Do you have this kind of program? But really, what is the value to society? What is the value for us as investors? What is this company about? So my goal is to make this more of a mainstream agenda. Great. I think that's it for me, unless there are any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for kicking us off with your comments there. Let me turn to Matt Roberts from Interserve. Please, Matt, tell us a little bit about how Interserve defines the value of sustainability and the data and information that you're collecting.
Okay, good afternoon, Ian. Good afternoon to everybody else. Thanks for the invitation to speak today. As Ian has already said, Interserve is a sort of global construction support and citizen services business. We're a FTSE 250. There's about 85,000 of us around the world, and we are one of the few companies that can claim to operate on all 7 continents, because we do work in Antarctica. Sustainability for us is now in its 3rd year of our strategy, which is called Sustainabilities. We published the formal document 2 years ago. And had a year's internal consultation before we got to that. That process is currently managed by a sustainabilities board, which sits in PLC. It's chaired by our CFO, Tim Hayward, who very much leads on this. And we operate a series of annual reporting progress reports, of which we're publishing the 2nd one of those next month, which will report on our progress against the various targets that we've set out in our sustainability strategy. We've built our strategy around our 4 capitals, 5 outcomes, 15 goals, and 48 targets approach. The capitals are the social, natural, knowledge, and financial capital, and then we've got 5 outcomes which shape the structure of the business, and those are places that benefit people, public services in the public interest. 50% of our turnover is with government of one form or another. More skills and opportunities, a positive environmental impact, and sustainable growth. And we've incorporated those outcomes in the strategy because sustainability very much drives the way the business wants to grow and prosper and deliver its services. We are, unlike other big brands, almost invisible to the general public. We are very much in the business-to-business space. That is changing as we get more involved with citizen service delivery and we're moving onto the front line. But we still need to deliver on our values to our customers. When 50% of your turnover is with government is quite intelligent around sustainability, so we've needed to build our strategy and our strategic approach around that. And just to sort of dig into some of those sort of goals and the outcomes rather, and into some of the goals that we are beginning to collect data around. We're looking at creating places that benefit people. We're looking at delivering and trying to value more than money. We've got targets to halve our absolute carbon output by 2020. We're looking to inspire future generations, so we have a major program around apprenticeships and graduates. And the whole social value space is incredibly important to us because we are a very large employer, and many of those employees are at the bottom of the pyramid, and many of the services that we supply are very much at that granular level. You know, we do an awful lot of mundane behind-the-scenes work where we are cleaning and cooking and guarding and doing back-office logistics for a whole variety of different places. But one of the places that we do occupy very intensely are the high streets of the United Kingdom. Predominantly, 50,000 of our employees are here in the UK, where you will find us underground maintaining the London Underground, for instance, in the capital city, but also working in the water industry and the sewerage industry underground. We're in public realm areas for local authorities. We're behind the plate glass windows of retail establishments. We're in the back office and the storerooms of those retail establishments. We're looking after healthcare for people at home. We're dealing with external advertising for people like Experian. We're one of those kind of brands which are quite invisible but omnipresent. And so our sustainability strategy is very much built around wanting to drive the business forward and deliver real customer value by meeting their needs. And our customers are telling us what they're interested in is help with things like saving energy, reducing waste costs, reducing water costs. So we're focusing our attentions not only on our business, but also on our customers' business, because one of the things that is unique to the support services industry is very few of the premises that we actually operate in are our own. We are quite often occupying other people's buildings, looking after other people's services. And so that has driven a lot of our thinking around how we collect metrics and how we report metrics. As I say, we have a fairly traditional reporting process on an annual progress report basis, but we're now moving into mapping in the geospatial sense our impact, because we're quite interested in the context of our impact. So for us, producing a number that says that we've delivered X number of apprenticeships isn't really particularly relevant. It can be a big number or a small number, but it needs to be seen in context. So what we're now doing is collecting an awful lot of our data around social impact, so that's payroll data, that's sustainable procurement data, and so on, putting it into a map base and then projecting that on top of publicly available data around things like multiple indices of deprivation, average household incomes, reported crime, travel to work, water consumption data, etc., etc., etc. There's a vast amount of information out there, and this enables us to see our business in context. So it's quite useful if you're place-based, and we're very place-based as a business, to be able to see and say, well, X number of employees work in this particular borough or this particular district or this particular county. Our spend through the payroll, through our employment, equates to this in the community. Our spend through procurement is such in the community, and we can start to see the sort of economic value that we are driving in a locality, which for us has been very important and quite revealing, and particularly for our sort of responsible business and public sector clients. They're also very interested in how and the impact that using people like us in their supply chain have. As I think most people taking part in this process will understand, is that quite often the impact of a business is not its direct impact, but its supply chain. And we are the part of somebody else's supply chain in most cases. So we're interested in reporting that data and collecting that data and then showing it in context, because I think context is incredibly important. We've also committed to producing a number of reports around the relevance and the impact of business. We recently published our society report, which was a piece of research that was done looking at public attitudes to business, and that's available on our website, as all our mapping tools and our social value tools are available on our website, and our progress reports and our overall sustainability strategy. Because transparency is incredibly important to us. We don't think there's much to be gained from keeping everything secret. We're spending large quantities of public money. We're quite proud of what we do and how we do it, and we want to share best practice and kind of build up that canon of tools, because we have an approach and we know everybody else has an approach, and that collectively over a period of time, I think we will come together to be able to report on some sort of common and context-related features. I think I'll probably leave it at that and then deal with anything later.
Thank you, Matt. That's interesting. I think we'll come back to a lot of the detail on impacting on supply chains and also impacting on your customer supply chains and how you you measure that. I think that's an interesting point. Sandy Stash from Tullow Oil, can you tell us a little bit now about your definitions of value and measurement for sustainability?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Tullow Oil, for those who aren't familiar with the company, is one of several mid-sized independent exploration and production companies. We're primarily in the oil sector, although we do produce some gas. Currently about a $3 billion market cap, and we are FTSE 250. We operate around the globe in about 20 countries, but we are largely a sub-Saharan African company, which differentiates us from quite a few of our competitors. In fact, we are one of Africa's leading E&P companies, currently with production in Ghana and development in East Africa. We are also primarily an exploration-led company, and in the sector, what that means is we oftentimes are the company that comes in and opens a geologic basin. So that puts us in the position oftentimes of being the first oil and gas producer in any given country, and that obviously creates its own sets of opportunities and challenges. We've largely put our sustainability program under the banner of shared prosperity, and fundamentally, and I think given, again, the countries in which we operate, it's very, very important that we're essentially in a sector that has a definite life. You find the resource, you produce it for some period of time, but at the end of the day, it is a business that has a definite lifespan. And again, particularly in these emerging economies, it's very important that whatever we do is a shared prosperity between us and our host governments, both on the national level and at the local level, number one. And number two, that we help to create a sustainability in the economy, or certainly the benefits of the money that a host country receives for the oil. We have a great interest in seeing that is invested in sustainability, both for the country and also for the economy of the country. I think, like a couple of the other speakers have said, probably a little bit in a transition here. I think whereas a couple of years ago, the questions in this space were always, do you have a policy that fill in the blank, or do you have a program that I think can only take you. I also think reporting a lot of numbers for the sake of reporting, although something that I think in the less transparent days of 15 or 20 years ago was very important. We're increasingly moving away from the sort of policy program and reporting for the sake of reporting to what I'll call actual business performance management. When you think about it in any other context, G&A, operating cost, revenue, whatever, numbers are in any business that you're in are very, very closely and frequently monitored for performance management. And I think in the space of sustainability, that hasn't always been the case. In fact, to be candid, I think sometimes it felt like something we were doing for the outside world and the expectations of the outside world for transparency, and less for actually using this information to improve our performance in the matter of sustainability. We, as such, have moved just this year actually to, number one, a much more balanced scorecard. And again, this is important because a lot of it were numbers that for many, many years we've been reporting externally, but we haven't really given complete visibility, and we haven't always had conversations about what the sustainability metrics were telling us, number one. And number two, I think sometimes it was not as broad as it should have been. We tended to utilize probably more metrics in the sort of occupational safety environment space and less in social performance, social investment, security, and human rights. So we've moved to a broader scorecard. We've also moved to what I like to call the X over Y, the numerator and denominator phenomena, and I think this kind of ties a little bit to the comment earlier about putting numbers in context. A number's a number, but a number that has a numerator and a denominator is one which you can do trending. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? You can benchmark, which is a very powerful tool, because I think corporations by their nature are competitive animals, and nobody likes to be fourth quartile in anything. So it's quite powerful to be able to benchmark against peer companies, and of course we're able to do that in things like total shareholder return and other things. And it increasingly I think it's important we do that in the sustainability space. And then finally, the putting numbers in the context of something, you can utilize those trends and those benchmarks to actually set targets. And that's early days for us, but certainly something that there is an appetite for in the company. That's important to me because in my experience, there's just so much sustainability functional organizations can do via supply push. And by that I mean, putting good policies or good toolboxes or whatever into the business. But the way to really get the business to own this is if you're targeting improvement and it's part of their overall business expectations or business deliverables, that sort of demand pull then for help is more evident when targets are actually set. In other words, it actually drives, I think, deeper interest in the business and deeper ownership of delivering sustainability as part of the overall delivery of the business. And again, on that, it's the early days for us, and I think, frankly, in the sector, it's a bit early days, but increasingly important to us maintaining our licenses to operate. And again, for Tullow, particularly in the countries in which we operate.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to bring in Cindy Rose now. I'm not sure if we have her on the line, though. I think we're having one or two technical problems. Cindy, are you there? Fine. While trying to get Cindy back, I wonder if our other two panelists might be interested in just going to the X over Y phenomenon that Sandy mentioned there. I think that's quite an interesting concept. To develop not just simple numbers, but numbers that you can use to show trends and to show benchmarks. Joanna, is that something you recognise from your experience at BT?
Definitely. You mean the trend recognizing, the tracing and the tracking?
Exactly, developing rather than just developing straightforward numbers, developing sort of complex numbers, and Sandy described it as the X over Y, so you can actually
absolutely. So it's not necessarily X over Y in our case. So as well as looking at trends, at what people would expect us to look, the things I was talking about before, like the size of the portfolio, sustainable portfolio. So the services, the IT services, the technologies that are amounting to the totality of products that we sell to help reach our goals, environmental goals, and help our customers and society. This is something we're tracing. So that's a very complex formula, but the result of that formula does need to show a certain trend, and currently it is showing a certain trend and in the right direction. So definitely something I agree that we need to do.
Sure. And Matt, how about for you at Interserve? Are you developing these complex numbers?
Yeah, I think all the numbers we have are ridiculously complex. Actually, I think part of my ambition is to try and get the numbers a bit more simple, because I think they're easier for people to understand if we can get simple numbers down onto the front line of the business. But we are developing, and we do report internally extensively on trends. We now hold each of our 5 business divisions to account for their trends on a monthly basis, and with more detailed and robust analysis on a quarterly basis to capture what they're doing and to make sure that they're moving in the right direction. Because I think and also to share best practice, so the different bits of the business can see the progress that their colleagues are making. We are, and I'm sure this is not unique to us, we are a very tribal business, and the level of internal competition, I suspect, rivals and at times exceeds our external competitive drive. So we do use that trend mapping and trend analysis to hopefully to our best advantage.
Sure. So it's all a question there then of making sure your internal stakeholders are aware of the benefits as much as your external.
Yes, it's very, very. Getting them on board has been absolutely fundamental to the ongoing success of the sustainability program. Our customers are pretty much bought into the benefits of sustainability. As I say, a large part of our business is with government or with very large corporates, and they, generally speaking, have already got it. I think in a thin margins activity like support services and construction, and quite traditional businesses in that respect, we've had to work very hard to get buy-in from our colleagues and show the benefits of the sustainable approach. And at the moment, we can point to probably 2 billion, well, just over 2 billion pounds worth of business won in the last 12 months, where our sustainability approach has been definitely the differentiator, and we believe probably the winning card. So that's quite a powerful message to be able to give in the business.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll echo that, because I think, if you don't engage your own people, it's very difficult to embed sustainability within the company. So it depends on which level of integration you want in your company, but I assume most companies who are progressive in CSR want to integrate sustainability into their practices. Without people cooperating, being aware, and buying into it, you're not able to do that. So we are tracing, employee engagement, volunteering, etc.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've all done the same with safety, so we now have to do it with a wider portfolio of sustainability, is embedding it, because we can't. It's not viable. It's not sustainable to just keep pushing this into people. They've got to adopt it as just business as normal.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay, well, we still, unfortunately, seem to have lost Cindy Rose. So let's move on slightly, looking at some measuring and valuation trends. Perhaps the panel can give me a few views and thoughts on trends they're seeing in developing sustainability measurement and valuation, and specifically from their own company's perspective, the changes that they are making in what they measure and the challenges that this is presenting. Perhaps we can start with Sandy Stash from Tullow Oil.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually something that we've spent a lot of time on, even in the last 12 months. I mean, I've already spoken about, the X over Y, more trending, and increasingly more targets that we actually hold ourselves to. But I think another area, and this one I'm going to almost frame in the one of the challenges we're facing is we have for years measured and reported our social investment, and and again, it tends to be in the context of a whole number, but even if you look at it vis-a-vis our overall profits or whatever, it still is only telling you the input. It's not giving you the output. So in my mind, you should be able to measure a rate of investment, rate of return on your social investment in the same way that or in a similar way, I should say, that you would measure a rate of return on any other kind of investment. There's remarkably little in the literature on this. Which again I find kind of remarkable. I think there's various groups that have done better efforts than others to better define the problem, but the solution it remains a little bit elusive. But we feel very, very important that we take that on, even if it's a clunky sort of way of doing it at first. In embarking upon this journey, the other thing that this caused us to do, which was quite valuable, was to look at our social investment, and actually look at it in the context not only of the communities in which we operate, but our own business model. And again, that's sort of maybe picking better things to spend our money on that benefits ourselves and benefits the communities in which we operate. Because what we have found is if we can kind of get that balance right, we make better investments and we make more sustainable investments, things that are actually going to live beyond the life cycle of our company or the life cycle of the particular extractive activity that we're involved in. In doing this, we actually considered the 20 or 25 things that you you can invest in from a social perspective, and we've really landed on a pretty small set of things that seem to make sense, and I'm just going to loosely put them in the space of places where you can make a social investment that is actually shared infrastructure. In other words, if you need to build an airstrip or a road or whatever to facilitate exploration or oil and gas production, doing that along with the community so that it actually could have multiplicative economic benefits to other parts of the economy or the community development they're working on. And then secondly, we're finding that we're getting better value, although again it'd be challenged to measure it as precisely as I'd like to, but we get better value secondly out of projects that are in the space of capacity building. And again, some of that has to do with the nature of our business, where we tend to be the first in. It's a brand new business. People don't know about the oil business, but you know, at the end of the day, you'd like to have a locally sustainable workforce, etc., running your oil field from the perspective of national and local content. So I think, you know, in summary, I think we've qualitatively made some moves toward better investment and picking better projects, and increasingly we're looking at better ways of actually measuring our rate of return on those investments in a way that is not dissimilar from how we measure rate of return on other aspects of our business investment.
Great. So it's about getting numbers that can be compared across different parts of the business, and I guess so that you can measuring the rate of return, as you say, on your social investment as well as any other investment you make. Can I turn now to Joanna Gluzman from BT? What changes are you making in what you measure and your challenges you face internally?
Yeah, well, I mean, apart from what I mentioned before, you know, the methodology of the value of the portfolio was something quite innovative last year. People are catching up, but I think I'm finding that what's really is becoming a hot topic now is, as Andy mentioned, is social return on investment. From our point of view, because we are touching millions of individuals in the UK, for us it's very much about the value to society and to the individual from being online. That is something we're facilitating, and that's our passion. And if part of our purpose, or our purpose is to create a better world, then, you know, what a better way to create a better world by helping people communicate, find jobs, and, you know, live fuller lives online. And the whole methodology behind it is something that is, you know, a hot topic at the moment, because there are lots of methodologies out there. But we believe we found a really robust one that, you know, we have a whole book with it. And again, if anybody interested, I'm very happy to share it. That shows, for example, that the value of somebody going online for the first time in the UK is £1,064 a year. So you can actually put real numbers on your investment in a specific, you know, product service touching somebody's life, and the value to that person in society. I think that's going to just grow in importance in the next few years.
Thank you very much. Matt, do you have any further comments at this stage?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, we're watching the SROA space quite closely. We had a flirtation with it about 2 years ago, and we felt that the methodologies at that time were not particularly useful to us. I think they are very useful to other businesses. We went down this geospatial route, wanting to see the investment or the impact that we have in context. We felt that was a very important way of doing it, and we've been focusing on collecting the geospatial information along with the other information that we have. So, you know, boring things like, you know, postcode metadata and bits and pieces, things off GPS units inside people's mobile devices to find out where things are happening. Because I think that for us, we would like to understand our levels of activity and investment in various different localities, and then start to understand the different values that they will generate. An apprentice in our construction business in Edinburgh will have a different social value from you know, a part-time employee working in you know, first job for somebody coming out of the prison system. We do a lot of work in the transforming rehabilitation space, working with ex-offenders. It's quite interesting to see what the impact of giving somebody who's just come out of custody a job has, and trying to work out the impact that can have, and the value to society and the value to the individual. So we work with a really diverse range of impacts, and for our sake, we've chosen to go down this context route rather than trying to put a number on it. But I do see the value for other people, and we will probably join that family at some point in the future.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Matt. Let's turn a little bit now to outside influences. I think it'd be interesting to explore how external influences can affect how companies deal with sustainability, what they measure, and how they calculate the value, and in turn how this affects corporate performance. So, first of all, I'd like our panel to consider what are the influencers that matter, and I'm thinking here in terms of shareholders, suppliers, customers, NGOs, and others. How do these stakeholders impact companies, and how do these parties affect, perhaps positively or negatively, what a company measures and how its business can target value in its programs? So perhaps, Sandy, can you tell us a little bit about your external influencers and how they impact how you measure and value your corporate sustainability?
Sure, no, happy to. Yeah, it's an interesting one for us because we, as a business, unlike the Matt and Joanna, really are not a customer-facing business, because we sell what oil we produce into sort of a worldwide market, very much a commodity-driven. So we're less customer-focused, or customer-facing, I should say. But certainly, the stakeholders we care about are clearly the investors, and I think increasingly investors are asking harder questions, and I think that's a good thing. In primarily in the space of how we are managing risks to the business. But they're obviously a very powerful stakeholder for a company like Tullow. Secondly, we do pay a lot of attention, I mentioned this earlier, to the communities and governments, or communities and nations in which we operate. And I think importantly, in that we operate in again, sub-Saharan Africa, we operate in the developing world. We have to be very careful to listen carefully on what they're asking of us, because oftentimes their concerns are different than our concerns, or different from other stakeholders. I had a recent interesting experience on an SRI roadshow, wherein I had plotted a bit of what's important to us and what's important to our shareholders, and I had several of the members of the investment community, advisors, investments, say, well, why is your national content, local content, your biggest risk, both you and your external stakeholders, and greenhouse gas emission is a lower risk? And I said, some of that has to do with the nature of where we operate. So we are, and then I guess I should say, thirdly, obviously, in the oil and gas business, the NGOs, CSOs are very, very important stakeholders for us. And again, I think we tend to get sort of special attention to that, because we do operate oftentimes in both culturally and environmentally sensitive areas. And again, we operate tend to operate in areas that are economically challenged. So we kind of look at a broad spectrum of outside groups that very much influence our thinking on sustainability.
Thanks, Sandy. Joanna, who are the outside groups that affect your sustainability programs, and how do they affect also where you see the value in your programs themselves?
So very similar to Sandy, and as you, most companies, I mean, first and foremost, our customers, very important to us, what they think, what's material to them, investors, governments, regulators. We operate in a regulated environment, so very important also to see what's going on there, employees and suppliers. So all of these we engage with on a regular basis. We publish in our sustainability report each year a materiality review, so we make it public. We make public the results of the consultation with those different groups, and we look at the areas that are most material to them. And that helps us shape our programs year on year. For example, if we see that human rights and privacy are becoming more important, to many stakeholders, that prompted us, for example, this year to do a whole review of the human rights policy. So we very much listen to what's important to our stakeholders, and we try to follow that year on year in our operations.
Okay, thank you. Matt, for you, who are the external influences, external stakeholders that influence your policies? What sort of NGOs, for example, do you engage with, and how do they affect your programs? And again, looking to how you value your sustainability programs, what effect do they have?
So I suppose the NGOs who are most interested in the social value side of our life are the ones that we currently have probably the deepest engagement with. People like Social Enterprise UK and Business in the Community. We work very closely with them, Shelter, and some of the other organisations in the sectors to do with the reoffending. We work quite closely with some of the organisations that are looking at the challenges around minimum pay, living wage, and so on, because we are a very large employer of people who are at or very near the bottom of the pyramid, and we're offering people first jobs in many cases, all very flexible opportunities. Conversations around 0 hours. We have very few 0 hours contracts. We do have some. Are quite important to us, and so we are engaging in those sort of spaces and responding to the challenges and the opportunities that are laid down there. Because a large chunk of our work is with governments. They obviously are influenced by a wide variety of the NGO sector, and that filters through to us. And we're one of those companies who responds very explicitly to our customers' asks. We don't, generally speaking, create products and then sell them to customers. Customers come to us and ask for us to deliver specific services, and we respond to that ask, and we work very closely with them to try and embed our sustainability values into the response that we make to that ask. So somebody will come to us and say, we look after the decommissioning of nuclear power stations, for instance. We don't do the nuclear engineering, that's done by somebody else, but we do pretty much everything else on a site. They are very, very clear and explicit about what they want us to do, and our job is then to build our sustainability credentials into that response and work with them to say, well, hang on, there's some stuff we can do here around local employment, or we can do around energy consumption, or water management, or skills, etc. We can try and join various bits of the jigsaw puzzle together, because we are all over the place in communities. Quite often, one of the challenges we address is, okay, we've got people working over here doing something, and we've got an opportunity, we've got a customer asking us to do something over here. Is there some synergy between the two that we can bring together to reduce the carbon impact, reduce the water consumption, reduce the waste production, or start to create a circular economy where products and services coming out of one bit of our business are actually being fed into or out of another bit?
Thank you, Matt. We have Cindy Rose now on the line. Cindy, are you with us?
I am. Sorry, I don't know what the technical problem has been.
Sure. Well, it's great to have you online, Cindy. I think you've been listening in to the webinar, and you've been following what our panelists have been saying, as I understand it.
I have.
I wondered if you could just reflect a little bit on what you've heard, and also there's something that's come in, a very common question that's come in from our audience is talking about quantifying the value of engagement with employees and other stakeholders on sustainability issues. and just the challenges of finding the monetary value from that. It's something we've discussed a lot in the last hour. So, Cindy, we have another 5 minutes or so. But perhaps you could reflect on what you've heard from an investor's perspective, and also think about for companies, how they can get to the stage of monetizing engagement with employees and other shareholders, and what that means for you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks very much. And also, we have touched on the idea of materiality quite a number of times over the course of the past hour. You have 3 exemplary companies here. All of them do a really good job on transparency. And I think really what's happening is sustainability issues, as everyone has pointed out, they're moving from being just environmental and just community-oriented to really working themselves into the core of the business. And all 3 of these companies have talked specifically about how they have their banners, their logos, and it basically reflects how sustainability is part and parcel of the actual company at its core. So what is changing in terms of the investment process now is looking at materiality of the risks from the company, and we've spoken about that a number of times. So when we talk to companies, what we do is we like to see that the companies themselves understand their risks. These will often be both financial and more ES&G specific risks or sustainability related risks. And we ask that the companies will give some kind of materiality matrix and rank their risks, financial and ESG or sustainability, alongside each other so that we can have a better idea as investors about where these risks lie. You had asked specifically about the value of doing employee engagement and also engaging stakeholders as a whole. And that is a really important part of conducting a materiality matrix, because it shows that the company is not only listening and thinking about its risks, but it's listening to its stakeholders. Now, stakeholders don't always reflect exactly what the most material risks to the business are. Sometimes stakeholders can be groups of people who are focus groups, or they're interested in one particular topic, maybe carbon or fossil fuels. But those particular potential risks will vary from company to company. So while it is a top-down approach to looking at things, it's also extremely important that the company, as each of these 3 companies do, obviously, looks bottom-up and also within their own company to find what those material risks are. And we were talking earlier about having that magic number, that numerator and denominator figure that would come up with some kind of quota or measure for the sustainability issue. And I think I have to agree with Matt. I think it was the one who said that we were looking to kind of reduce the complexity of telling people outside, of telling stakeholders, and also inside, telling employees where we are in terms of our risks and the factors that make us sustainable over time, whether they are financially related or sustainability related, because really from the investment perspective, we look at those as a whole now. So I think that this is a fascinating study, and I didn't know if anybody else had any more questions. I realize I've been talking for a few minutes, but I just think that this whole world is changing drastically, and whereas we've come from doing the kind of simplistic SRI approach where people will say, well, I don't want to invest in this particular activity or that particular activity, to making ES&G, environmental, social, and corporate governance factors, part of that materiality matrix for a company. And that's the true integration approach that the principles for that the PRI, the Principles for Responsible Investing, have looked for since 2006 and 2007. And that GRI 4 now is the reporting framework that is focusing and getting companies to focus much more on their materiality concerns.
That's great. I think that would be a good point for us just to turn to our other 3 panelists, perhaps for a one-sentence summing up of where they see their journey, as Cindy outlined. So quickly turning to Joanna, just in one sentence, where are you in terms of getting materiality on these matters into your corporate the way you value and measure your sustainability?
It's 100% there. As I said, we conduct a materiality review each year. We publish it, and that actually paves the way to, reviewing our strategy every year and the way we work. So it's 100% integrated into what we do.
And Matt?
We're doing it. I can't say it's been easy. I think we're still very much at the beginning of our sustainability journey. We've adopted the IIRC integrated reporting approach for our annual reporting, which is applying a new layer of requirements on our sustainability reporting because it's quite challenging. But I would be reluctant to say it's 100% integrated into the business. We're certainly well on the way to doing that, and it is our ambition that we will be able to report. Well, we are now doing integrated reporting, but we would like to think that the quality of our integrated reporting will be as good as the quality of our financial reporting.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And Sandy, finally, very briefly, if you can.
Yeah, no, just very much on the journey. It's high on our radar screen and something we're working on. But it's important to us that we do it not again just for the sake of the external bit, but in a way that it actually drives performance in the business.
Great. Thank you very much. We're out of time. I'd like to thank our panel for their time and their insight today, and thank you all for listening and for all your questions. So once again, if you'd like to understand the challenges for companies and trying to put some hard numbers on what sustainability means, please join Innovation Forum on the 29th and 30th of June in London for our Measurement and Valuation of Corporate Sustainability Conference. In the meantime, please contact us with any questions and comments, and we will be in touch with a recording of the webinar in due course. I hope you found today's discussion interesting, and thank you very much for listening.